All right. Hey, welcome, Reagan, to Unfeigned Christianity. It's good to have you on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Asher. I've been looking forward to this for a while, actually.
Yeah, we've batted it around, talked about it for a little while here. We, it's interesting. I was just thinking this morning, just some of the ways we've gotten connected. I know a few years ago, I think you wrote a blog post for me. I was having some guest writers write, and you wrote a
Hmm.
blog post back then. And
Yeah.
since then, you've gotten into particularly video work and podcasting with Anabaptist perspectives. And I think you have a couple other podcasts of your own, don't you?
Yeah. I actually have to stop and think. So we have our Patreon exclusive podcast with Anabaptist Perspectives. I have a book reviews podcast, just kind of for the fun of it, me and a
Yeah,
friend. Yeah, different things here and there. They're not all very consistent. But yeah, I keep myself busy, I guess.
yeah, yeah. No, it's good to keep tabs on what all you're doing. You've been involved in a lot of different work, just particularly in the media world, but also in nonprofit world and working with refugees in the Middle East. With I forget the name of the nonprofit you work with there.
Yeah, so that's good because we don't release the name
Yeah,
publicly.
sorry, I didn't ask about that. No, that's good. I
That's
think I
great.
just
We have
you don't have to.
different cover names
Yeah.
that we use for it. But yeah, I've been involved in that work
Okay.
for about 4 years now
Yeah.
in the Middle East. So we have teams in Iraq and Jordan. So I get to travel a lot
Yeah.
for my work, which is really fun. I mean, okay, fun, but it's also like it's very sobering at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So I when I first well, I guess just for some background for us for my audience, one of the ways we overlap in the last year or so is we're both a part of my brother Christopher's podcast, The Third Way. And so that we haven't done an episode there for probably 6 months or so now. I think
yeah, I think October last year or something.
maybe batting around some more ideas for starting it back up here soon. But that's kind of how we have overlapped. You, me, Christopher, and Titus Kipfer. Um, but I lost my train of thought now. Oh, when I first was going to have you on, I was thinking about talking about your work in the Middle East and just particularly Anabaptists working with refugees in threatening circumstances, situations. Since thinking of having you on, all this with COVID has come up, and we have a new threatening situation that we're dealing with. And particularly, you have been a part of starting another Anabaptist COVID response, Anabaptist
Yeah,
COVID-19 response. Is that correct?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it. It was kind of an emergency response type thing. We threw it together really quickly. And honestly, there's a lot of people involved. A lot of others did most of the work, but I got to be a part or am a part. That's
Yeah.
been quite
Yeah.
the ride so far.
Tell us a little bit about that. What spawned it? Obviously, we can probably kind of deduce what spawned it, but what specifically initiated
Sure.
it, and what kind of work have you guys been doing?
Yeah, sure. So, my good friend Matt Landis up in
Oh,
Lancaster,
okay.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So, Landis Technologies Computers. He put out just on Facebook, said, "Hey, I was thinking get local business leaders together and let's do a video chat about how is this affecting us." That was right when
Hmm.
lockdowns were starting to happen. This is, I think, early. Man, I better be careful with my dates here. Couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
So we're recording this towards the end of April, just for the record here.
Hmm.
So got some group, different people together, a number of businessmen locally there in Lancaster County, and I was like, hey, I would love to be in on this conversation. I had just come from Europe at the time, actually,
Hmm.
so I'd had some pretty firsthand, not firsthand, but we were really close to the
Yeah.
pandemic. At that point, it was really big in Italy and Germany, and it was just starting to outbreak in the UK. So I was like, I'd love to hear what these people would have to say. So I get on there. They're talking about all kinds of ideas as far as how they're affected as business, what can they do for their employees,
Hmm.
how can they serve their local communities. And it was a really, really good um, experience bringing those people together. So Matt Landis had kind of spearheaded that. And as a result, there's a number of people on that call that said, wow, like these needs are serious, and we should be getting involved
Hmm.
in some way. So one of them, Merle Weaver, a good friend of mine, again, we worked together
Hmm.
quite a number of projects over the
Mm-hmm.
years, know him really well. He said, hey, do you have any contacts in New York City? So this is a few days after that initial call. So I sent him all the people I knew in New York City. We had just been up there, Anabaptist Perspectives, interviewing some people.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like last summer. And that was Sunday night. Monday afternoon, he's like, hey, you have time for a video call? Hop on a video call. Goodness, he's basically built half an organization. We've got a large nonprofit, Anabaptist nonprofit on the line. We've got a pastor
Wow.
up in Brooklyn's on the line, and we're like, okay, Pastor Anthony Kreider from the Pilgrim Fellowship up there.
Hmm.
What do you see? What do you need? And he just laid it out. He's like, okay, here's what we've got. And then this other organization that was on the line said, hey, well, we've got funding, we've got logistics. Let's make this thing happen. Half a day later, literally 12 hours later, we had our first team on their way to New York City. We had already created info sheets for people on how they could get involved. We had a web page up. It moved so fast.
Wow. Yeah.
It was amazing. Like truly, I've never seen anything quite like it. You had a lot of people that were really inspired to make it happen. So within a couple of days, we had, 20 people or so in the organization making things work. Bookkeeper, we had a nonprofit we were using at that point. Networked with quite a number of churches in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And out of that, one of the struggles I think we have as a people is knowing, okay, what news can I trust? This is a really big issue in America right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people were just like, well, we don't know, we're not sure. And there was a lot of indecision in our churches. And we felt, our people want to get involved. They want to help, but they don't know how. They need some leadership. And it felt like that's kind of what we were doing. It's basically saying, hey, here's these churches in New York City. Here's their exact needs. Here's specifically how you can help. And when we started putting that out, WhatsApp, on Telegram, on Facebook, it was truly marvelous how the churches, the Mennonite churches, are mobilized to respond to those needs. Yeah. So yeah, here we are about 3 weeks later. Things are still going as rapidly as ever.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a little bit of how it started.
Yeah. Wow, that's really neat for as last minute as it was that it got pulled together like that.
Can't believe it worked.
Yeah. Which is just kind of a side note is one of the things that I don't know. I'm biased obviously because it's not like I've interacted with too many other church groups, but that's something Anabaptists are good for is emergency response and pulling together and dropping time and energy and money into making something happen like that. And it's exciting to see it fleshed out. What are some of the things that you guys have some of the needs that you guys have addressed and still are needed?
Yeah. So to kind of give a big picture, my friends, when it comes to the COVID-19 thing, generally it's one of two responses. The one is, oh my, sheer panic, run around with your hair on fire, we're all gonna die.
Yeah. The
other one is basically it's a big hoax, it's just the flu, not a problem. It's a conspiracy basically.
Yeah.
And I really don't care about either of those two responses. That's not why we're here. The church is here to serve. So what we were trying to do with this, find the middle ground, call up pastors in New York City. They know their communities. We call up, Anthony especially, there was a number of other pastors and churches, people we know. And he said, hey, I'm in and out of hospitals on a daily basis. I can tell you exactly what that specific hospital needs. I will hand deliver things. So the one hospital that was there did not have surgical masks. They were completely out of masks. Okay, that's a real problem. Yeah. Regardless of the whole mask debate, you don't want your heart surgeon coming in without a mask. It's a big deal. So we work with some different medical professionals, and we figured out ways we can sew masks that are obviously not as good as, say an N95, medical grade mask, but it's definitely better than using napkins and handkerchiefs. Literally, that's what they were doing. This is a hospital in Brooklyn. There's a number of hospitals doing this at that point. And we said, well, how many masks do you need? He said, literally as many as you can sew at this point, until the
Wow.
industry kicks back up and they
Mm-hmm.
can, start filling all the back orders that are needed for New York City.
Mm-hmm.
So this was all went down Monday. By Friday, we had a truck on the way to New York City with, I think it was like 2,000, 3,000 masks,
Wow.
which is insane.
Hold it.
That was
Yeah.
individual Mennonite ladies primarily, at home sewing masks as
Wow.
fast as they could and hauling them off to a drop-off point. We grabbed all the masks, we sanitized them. We had to make sure we're all
Yeah.
up to, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We put filters in them. And yeah, they went to New York City that Friday, and then we just kept doing that. So as of now, I don't know, it's somewhere like 10,000 masks, I think, that we've delivered to New York City. And
Oh
again,
wow.
this isn't like we aren't just arbitrarily sending masks. This is a pastor who knows medical professionals, who's there, and they're giving him specific, like, okay, we
Request.
need that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he brings it, literally takes it as a box, hands it to him, and it's awesome. Like, we get messages and photos from EMS guys and hospital crews wearing the masks and being like, you guys are literally, like, you're saving lives. This is
Wow.
huge, because now we don't have to worry about
Yeah.
possible infections themselves and things.
Yeah.
So that was the primary thing. That's where it started. Now,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, now, several weeks later, industry is starting to kick in. The need for masks is not nearly what it was, and that's fine. We'll probably shut that down at some point. But then the other one was just meals for people impoverished, groceries. Elderly who can't leave their homes because they're high risk individuals. So we started doing that. We've done, thousands and thousands of food boxes. I think it's like 9,000, 8,000 food boxes so far.
Yeah.
And then the last one we did was prepped meals, fully packed, sanitized. We're, again, medical staff supervising the operation, where we would pack these meals for healthcare workers. So the healthcare workers, again, this is where the confusion comes in for a lot of people. Are the hospitals in New York City actually that bad off? It looks so bad on TV and so forth. So we're like, okay, no problem. Let's call up some hospital staff. So we started calling some Mennonites that work in the hospitals. And he said, yeah, it's definitely bad. It's really bad. We don't have time to eat, literally. They're just too overworked. It's like, oh, well, let's pack pre-made meals for medical care workers. That way they can stay on the job and they don't have to worry about leaving the hospital, going somewhere, trying to get food, then coming back, having to scrub up, gown up all over. Like, it's a huge mess, very inefficient. So we're taking in boxes of meals right into the hospital, drop them right off. Here's your lunch. Makes a massive difference, saves them a lot of time. So again, we've done thousands of meals for healthcare workers as well. And the one, here just a couple days ago sent us a message. He's like, you guys, this is a lifesaver. He literally hadn't had a full meal, like a real meal, in like 2 weeks, because they'd been running so hard. Anyway, long story. That's what's going down.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah, I have two siblings that are in the healthcare. They're nurses in hospitals. And my brother is in a children's hospital, so it's not directly connected with COVID as much as a adult hospital would be. But still, like, part of what makes this such a big issue is that it's the time of year where emergency rooms and hospitals are already kind of maxed out, and then you have COVID on top of it. And both my brother and my sister have talked about just not being able to take time to eat. My sister's worked on the COVID floor several times, and she has 5 patients. It takes 3 hours to make one round with all 5, and they have to do everything. They don't let social workers and doctors and all, I don't know what all the different people, like on a regular unit, they would just be watching their vitals and making sure medically they're all taken care of, but they're doing everything. They're giving food, they're giving all of this, and in 3 hours something major could happen to someone with COVID. And so there's the stress of like getting back there quick enough to see if have they gone into what do they call it, code, has they had to run a code
are
on
they
them?
coding? Are they is it ICU unit, do you know, or not?
Well, so my sister who works here in LA, they basically turned a lot of units, so they shut down a lot of the extra units that are, I don't know what the term is, but not as urgent. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
elective surgeries and so forth, and they've transferred a lot of that personnel to work with COVID specific patients, and so that's what happened with her unit. She is back and forth some. She's not in the COVID unit all the time, but it's a uniquely COVID unit, only COVID patients in that unit. So I don't know if they consider it essentially ICU or not, but um,
Probably.
yeah,
Yeah. That's yeah, see, and that's the problem with this, and I not a medical expert, but just from what they've been telling us, when you don't have enough ICU beds, it starts
yeah,
becoming a real problem. So
yeah,
it's not a super deadly disease. I mean, you compare it to the Black Plague, it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
that big of deal. But when you're taking all these ICU beds, you start
Hmm.
running out of ventilators, it starts getting scary,
Yeah.
especially for the patients, not being
Hmm.
able to breathe well. That's a terrifying experience. And
Hmm.
you can't have visitors come visit you. The psychological toll of that
Yeah.
yeah, that would not be fun, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. And so
Um,
you're not only are they caring for the patients medically and even food and stuff like that, but then because of visitors not being able to visit, they're running relays between phone calls with family and then giving that excuse me, giving that message to the patient and so forth. And it's it's true. Like there's it's if we're just looking at the amount of people that have died from COVID compared to past pandemics, we could say, wait, this is way blown out.
mhm.
But how quickly it's risen, and then just the psychological toll on the people that have it or who have family members who have it, and the healthcare
Mhm.
professionals. Like there's so many different dynamics at play. That's good to remember as we.
Yeah.
So what? Yeah, just for the audience, if you want to look up more of what Anabaptist COVID-19 response team, is that the title? Am I getting that right? If they
Right.
search
Yeah.
that on Facebook, there's a Facebook page. Is there a website too with?
Yeah, yeah, there
Yeah.
is. So just anabaptistcovidresponse.org,
Okay.
and then Facebook/ Anabaptist COVID response. And to be fair, like this crisis may go away and we may shut down and not need to do this, or we may
Yeah.
need to throttle back significantly. But at this moment in time, at this intersection of time, hearing the needs from our brothers and sisters up in New York City, we just couldn't sit by.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
mean, regardless of all the noise and controversy about how bad is it actually,
Yeah.
honestly, I don't care. Like the
Yeah.
debates on Facebook and whatever, I really, true, like it honestly makes me upset about, oh, well, we're not sure. Did actually this many people die, or is it actually this bad? I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't care. Like my friends in New York City, doctors on the floors are saying, well, it doesn't matter. Like we are overworked
Yeah.
and we need help. Please help us. We'll figure out the details
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
that's kind of been my response. I haven't
Yeah.
really, honestly, I haven't dug into that. I don't follow the news on it. I don't find
Yeah.
that that's very helpful. We work with medical professionals who are there
Who are
that
seeing
we
it firsthand?
know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like and pastors who understand the
Hmm.
psychological toll, and it's real stuff.
Yeah.
This is what the church is made to do.
Yeah.
In times like this is when the church really shines.
Yeah.
And instead, it feels like, I know this isn't true, but it feels like instead of the church being a rising star, all we're doing is sitting at home in self-isolation, watching Netflix and spouting off on Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a real missed opportunity,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
to actually show the world, like, this is the stuff we're made of.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I need to be careful I don't come down too hard on people, but at the end of the day, if you have time to spread conspiracy theories on Facebook, you would have enough time to call up your elderly neighbor and say, hey, how are you doing? Can I
Mm-hmm.
go get groceries for
Mm-hmm.
you? Can I help you?
Mm-hmm.
Can I mow your lawn for you? Like that's where the breakdown starts happening,
Yeah.
if you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah. Exactly. And even so, the reality is there are people getting a call coming through here. Sorry. There are
Nice.
people. Let me just quickly shut that off so it doesn't happen again.
So important question. Do you
Yeah.
do you edit these podcasts? Or you
I
could just leave this in just to make it
we
interesting,
could, yeah.
audience.
I may just leave it in. I started out as kind of, no, it's unedited, it's unfeigned, like there's no pretense, no whatever. Not that editing is pretense, but the
Sure.
just to embody the goal of just sincere and transparent. But I've had more and more conversations where they go for like 2 hours or something, and it's like, well, not everything we talked about is necessarily pertinent. So I do some editing. I also let, if my boys or something need something, they might knock on the door and it take a couple minutes. I might chop it down so it's like 10 seconds and the audience knows that something happened, but they don't have to sit in quiet for, I don't know. We'll see. Um,
Cool. Sure. I probably should have asked before we were recording, so if the poor audience has to live through another 2 minutes, sorry about that.
no, that's I got a review the other day that said something. Are you familiar with Joe Rogan?
Oh yeah, a little bit. I mean, I don't follow him really, but
I don't
yeah.
know who it was that reviewed this, but he said it'd be interested. I'm assuming it's a he. They'd be interested in seeing a Joe Rogan style episode that goes for like 3 hours or so.
Whoa, long form podcast, Dan Carlin style.
I
Okay.
guess, yeah. So I'm assuming
Interesting.
people aren't too turned off by the periodic interruptions there. But
Fun.
what was I getting ready to say? I'm trying to think now.
We were starting to get into some of the practical stuff.
Oh yeah. You were
Um,
talking about getting groceries and mowing lawn for people.
yeah.
Um, like there's people who really need that we could be, even though we're not gathering in groups of 10 or more or whatever the size is right now, but we could be serving them and helping out. There's also, like, for those of us that would be tempted to sit around on Netflix and just be like, hey, this is a vacation at home. I know in our community, like, there's a lot of people we could be interacting with virtually, like chatting with or doing video calls or whatever, because they're prone to mental struggles while they're away from friends and family. And well, obviously, maybe not family, but um, I think, just to your point, that there's, like, we need to be careful what let's not spend our time spreading conspiracies or spouting our opinions even about how this crisis is being handled. Like, we're in a crisis, and so no matter what, however it gets handled, there's going to be problems with it. Like, we'll look back and be like, okay, next time we're going to do this differently. Like, that's how they're handling this compared to 5-6 years ago, whenever Ebola and swine flu was and stuff. They're looking back at things and being like, okay, let's do things different. So that there's plenty of issues. That's not what we need to be focused on right now. How can we be a part of saving lives or preventing people from going insane or whatever? I mean, that's kind of a bleak outlook, but that's becoming
Right.
a real
Yeah.
part of the problem as well. Um,
Right.
so yeah, thank you for what you guys are doing. And thanks Matt Landis. I've never met Matt Landis, but I've interacted with him on Facebook and so forth, and just
Sure.
definitely appreciate his vision for helping and getting practically involved. I'm curious, you just to kind of transition a little bit from what you guys are doing and seeing to discussing a little bit more COVID as a whole, and especially how the church has responded to pandemics in history, so forth. Before we do that, though, you mentioned Matt was connecting other business leaders and how it was affecting them and so forth, and then it kind of transitioned to helping out in New York City. How is one of the things I've been trying to get a better handle on is how is COVID, the lockdowns and so forth, affecting businesses? Like, what was there more conversation about how to help the businesses from that as well?
hmm Yeah, there was. One of the brothers on the call, his business had been shut down for several weeks at that point already.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I forget exactly what industry, but obviously it was deemed non-essential.
Yeah.
And he has I think it was a couple dozen employees or something like that. And of course, the office guys can work from home, but like when it comes to industry, manufacturing, it was that type of
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
You just have a couple dozen people that are sitting at home with no pay.
Yeah.
That's serious. That's really sad because a lot of these people they don't have a savings account, say. Now, I'm not, was it a right call to shut down business? Not. I don't know if that's really the issue at this point.
Mm.
Um, but, he said what they had been doing even before any of the lockdowns, they had instigated some pretty rigorous, sanitation policies. They're wiping stuff down all the
Mm-hmm.
time. They're decontaminating things all the time. If anybody has the slightest amount of sickness, they were supposed to not come to work, and
Yeah.
they would still get their pay for that day because they're like, we will do everything we can to choose the high ground.
Yeah.
Take the high ground in these situations, even if some of the regulations, might have seemed a little bit excessive in his particular situation. And he said, really, that wasn't the point.
Yeah. Yeah.
The point was we care about people, we love
Mm-hmm.
people,
Mm-hmm.
and if doing something, oh, okay, I just heard a weird noise.
Oh,
Are you
I
are you still there?
I'm still here. I did not hear the noise, but I'm not
Okay,
sure if it comes through or not.
it was starting to blink, or yeah, I was
Okay.
making the noise. Anyway, but back with that. So
Yeah.
he's like, if there's anything we can do to help do our part, be a good witness by the respect that we give,
Mm-hmm.
and help our employees stay healthy. That's what
Mm-hmm.
we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the first things they did is they promised their workers 2 weeks of pay, even after they got shut down,
Oh wow.
to give them
Yeah.
enough time, build a little buffer,
Yeah.
till the stimulus check came, till the whatever the unemployment came.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's really neat. Like, here's someone who, maybe there's some elements he doesn't agree with. That's not the issue.
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
care about my employees and their
Yeah.
families.
Yeah.
We're running into the same thing with our business down here in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
So far we're deemed essential. It hasn't affected us too much.
Mm-hmm.
But like, if we get shut down, I hate to say it, but I mean, there's a number of our employees that would go hungry because
Yeah.
they don't have any money.
Yeah.
And that's serious.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, there's a lot of businesses in those types of situations
Mm-hmm.
right now, unfortunately.
I do, one of the things that I do to support ourselves here in California is I have a handyman business, and so handyman work is considered essential, but a lot of my clients have canceled or postponed. And so like the middle of March, I think it was the 15th of March, I had March booked, but then all of a sudden it was just totally empty. And so,
Ooh, wow.
and the thing, so I'm not responsible for other families. It's me and my family. I'm just a sole proprietor. But what was I gonna say? Oh, that's the thing that I've thought a lot about too, is we can debate and argue the necessity of, like, it seems the conversation gets pitted medical versus economic, when the reality is we're in
Right.
a crisis. We're in a crisis, and so everything is being affected, and that's a tragedy. How can we help? Like, how can we make it through this? Is there anything that Anabaptist COVID response team is doing for businesses, particularly if any of our audience is looking for something, or is it just kind of a way of keeping in tune with things?
Yeah, we're not doing a whole lot with businesses
Okay.
at this point. One example, though, would have been some businessmen said, hey, there's a food processing plant of some kind, I forget exactly what, that supplies grocery stores, that they had to lay off too many people because of illness or because they were scared to come to work. They're like, we got to keep the doors open. This is an
Yeah.
essential, definitely.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
supplying grocery stores. Can you blast this out to your network and get us some temporary employees for 1 week? And
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
they'll pay. Like,
Yeah.
we got to keep these assembly lines
Yeah.
going. We decided not to put it on like our official COVID response channels, but each person on the leadership just put it out to their church. Hey,
Yeah.
is anybody looking for work?
Yeah.
Just like that, within a day, we had enough employees to keep them going for a
Yeah.
couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of, the Mennonite networks, where
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, like, we'll step in. I mean, here's a real need
Yeah.
to keep the doors open on some of these businesses.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole economics versus medical science clash, like, Yeah, I don't know. It's not really, that's above my pay grade.
Yeah.
But if each person, does what they can to help,
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways we can pull together and come through this without trying to have a big pushback and rebel against whatever.
Yeah.
This is not, I think the problem is that, some people, I guess, think it's somebody pulling strings and it's all big scam. As at the end of the day, this whole situation is really not ideal for everybody,
Involved.
basically everywhere,
Yeah.
and it's not fun. Nobody wants to see this keep going on.
No. Yeah.
Nobody does, and that
Yeah.
includes all your economists, your Wall Street. Everybody is kind of annoyed at
Yeah.
the instability.
Yeah.
So whatever we can do to keep the peace, I think,
Yeah.
is wise
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not at all given. Really, I don't think I'm given to conspiracy theories, but my wife was tracking this all the way back in the beginning of January. We've spent some time in Asia, and so we like to keep our tabs on Asia, and she saw it coming up in China, and just kind of followed it on YouTube, some news channels over there, and would talk with me about it. And my initial response, and honestly, because I've read too many stories and seen too many movies, not educated at all, but my initial response was like, "Oh, bioterrorism."
Yeah.
And I've thought
Nice.
about that since, and that was way back before we knew like how serious this actually was. But there's not, even no matter what route you take to consider bioterrorism, there's not a logical conclusion. Like who's trying to get who? And so
Everybody's in a bad way right now.
everybody's in a bad way, yeah. And there's no government benefiting from this. I don't know of any particular people group benefiting from this. And yeah,
See, there's two problems. One is a lack of understanding about the global scene in general.
yeah,
That's an issue that's always kind of been an issue where we don't have empathy towards the people of China, the people of India, the people of whatever.
yeah,
But the other issue is not enough localization, if you know what I mean. Like localized as in, hey, my hospital needs hospital gowns. Wow, like let's sew hospital gowns. Like that's a
yeah,
real thing.
yeah,
Honestly, if you're listening to this podcast, literally cold call your hospital
yeah.
and say, do you need this?
Mm-hmm,
There's a good chance they do. Maybe not by the time you listen, but like
mm-hmm,
that was a real thing for a
mm-hmm,
while, or is a
mm-hmm,
real thing.
mm-hmm.
So there's two problems where we don't fall in either one. We don't actually have a good understanding of the global scene, and we're not understanding the local dynamics of how the church can serve
Yeah,
its community.
yeah,
And at the end of the day, I have a lot of friends who seem to think this is only regulated to America, and I was like, man, you need to become friends with people in India
yeah,
right now, or the Middle East. It's
yeah,
bad.
yeah,
They're starving to death inside their homes
yeah,
because of lockdowns. That's a
yeah,
problem. And here we are complaining, oh, I have to sit at home with my Netflix,
yeah,
and boo-hoo, sad for me. That's just really selfish and sad.
yeah.
Like, you have not had to sit in lockdown where you literally will starve to death
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
within a few weeks
mm-hmm,
because of the lockdown.
mm-hmm,
We don't understand how
mm-hmm,
bad it could actually get. Now,
mm-hmm,
I'm not saying it'll ever get that bad. Probably not. But
mm-hmm.
that's what's happening to 1 billion people in India right now.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, I have friends there. I was getting a
mm-hmm,
score of messages from the one yesterday, and he sent me all these pictures. They're starting to do food distributions because people are just going to starve.
yeah,
Um,
mm-hmm. Yeah,
anyway, that was a bit of a rant there, but it is a little disconcerting how little empathy the church can have sometimes
yeah.
for the rest of the world.
So, kind of dovetailing off that, because we have friends as well. I see people on Facebook freaking out because they were told they couldn't get gas without a face mask, and in India they're being
Whoa.
beaten by police if they go out under the shelter at home.
Whoa.
And so
Whoa.
it's like something's a little off here as far as what we're.
Whoa.
And I think a lot of it is fear that we would get to that place where we are India, and then we don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we'll get into this a little bit more down the road, but let's back up a little bit down the road in this conversation as far as how the church should respond in when governments don't give us rights. What is the? We talked a little bit before we turned the mics on. What is the kind of a history? Now, this isn't anything that either you or I are super educated on, but what is the history of how the church responds in pandemics? You mentioned some things that N.T. Wright has talked about. In college I read The Rise of Christianity. I don't know if you're familiar with that book.
Yeah.
By Rodney Stark, and that's one of the things he brought out is under the Roman Empire, the church was the one with major pandemics that was out helping people, and people could find through. I'm not quoting him. I'm just pulling on my memory, but it was essentially through pandemics the church was growing because of how involved they were being in people's lives. You want to talk some more about that? Like what is the history of the church in pandemics, and how can that help us in this one?
Right, and I think some of the reason people are so not sure what to do is they don't quite realize, brutal disease, pandemics, the Black Plague. These have been normal human experiences since time immemorial. Like that is just how the world works. Diseases are deadly. And back when they didn't have microscopes and didn't understand bacteria and viruses and so forth, there was very little you could do to stop them. And we think it's bad now. It's not bad. I'm sorry. Just get over it, because back in the day, you're talking some of these towns, 90% or more would be wiped off the map. We just do not have a box in our brains to understand how devastating that would be. And it would happen multiple times. It was just kind of a normal thing. Oh, yeah, of course, half your kids will die of disease before the age of 5 or whatever. There was numerous outbreaks in the Roman Empire where this was pretty typical. So there'd be an outbreak. They would start quarantining different cities off that had it. So trade stops. So people are starting to starve. People are dying horrific deaths from the disease because there's no way to treat them. They don't have air conditioning or ventilators or, vaccines or, well, maybe I shouldn't even mention vaccines. It's too controversial. But they didn't have basic medical care that we take for granted today. Yeah. So what would happen is all the rich folk would, take some of their servants and go to their country villas and just hang out there for a while until the pandemic would run its course and kill everybody off. Then they would move back into the city. It's very normal. The Christians, on the other hand, would stay. They would stay in the city, and they would be the ones to treat people. And when we say treat people, like imagine the streets of ancient Rome, with a lot of the population wiped out, all the rich people gone, everybody's starving. And you see these Christians walking the streets, going into people's homes, caring for people, helping people that are literally dying on the cobblestone streets. And
to add to that picture a little bit, there's trash and urine and all kinds of stuff in those streets. Like it's not a clean American street.
Yeah, because like essential services, that would all disappear very quickly. Everybody's fighting for their lives at that point. And so the Christians would stay and actually treat these people. And especially after the pandemics would be passed, people would look back and say, wow, like who are these Jesus followers? Nobody else cared. Why would they do this? And to be honest, they would get sick and die. It's not like they were superheroes. These are normal human beings like us, who said, Jesus called us to serve. We're going to serve. And this is not a one-time thing. This has happened many times in church history. A plague would come through. The Christians would be the ones who would turn their monastery into a field hospital. They would, research the best medical science of the day to try to find cures. They were the ones who said, we need to self-isolate. We need to quarantine our town. We have these ideas like isolation and quarantine is like this weird cross we have to bear that's so sad for us 21st century people who have it so soft. But I mean, that's a very normal experience that our forefathers went through quite a lot. I think it's helpful for us to take a step back and realize the church has handled this. They've handled things that honestly look a lot worse than this. And as a result, Christianity almost always spread faster and more effectively than the virus ever did,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So at the end
Yeah.
of the day, the church wins, in
Yeah.
these situations.
Yeah.
And here we have this opportunity to do so again.
Yeah.
And what a testimony. Looking back 50 years from now, our grandkids would be like, wow, you lived through the pandemic of, 2020. What was it
Yeah.
like? And we'd be like, we were there. We were there serving. We were caring for our neighbors. We did what the church was made to do, not out
Yeah.
of pride, but because that's who Jesus made us to be. Or we can say, we sat at home, watched Netflix, and ranted on Facebook.
Yeah.
Those are the two responses. You're going to
Yeah.
be one or the other,
Yeah.
and think about that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so does that mean, are you suggesting we should go out and meet as a church on Sunday? And that,
That's a great question. Flesh that one out a little more.
well, I guess I'm being a little rhetorical.
Uh-huh.
What I hear you saying, and based upon history, is that we need to be out caring for people who need help, whether that's people who are sick with the flu or people who are elderly people who need to especially be the ones quarantining, who can't go get their groceries, who can't mow their lawn, stuff like that. Touching in with people who might be prone toward mental illness during a time of isolation, stuff like that. Like, we need to be engaged and active and moving throughout our culture, society. But what I see on Facebook is a lot of discussion about getting churches back together again and our right to meet for worship.
Mm-hmm.
And this is less about whether I think we should do that anyways. Like, obviously I am not excited about a future of a church that is just virtual, because church and ministry can only happen face to face, flesh to flesh, like real physical interactive relationships. But church services and gatherings and times of prayer and times of worship can happen virtually. And so maybe our focus should be less on trying to get back together as a meeting and more on how can we help, like you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But should we, like, is gathering together, is that a huge part? Like, did the church continue to gather even when they were told to isolate or something like that?
So, great question. I don't know historically, honestly,
Yeah.
how that worked. I do know, I think this relates, but Martin Luther, for example, there was a plague that came through,
Yeah.
and he wrote a piece, a little tract is what they called it, on how Christians should respond. And he basically says, hey, we need to do what healthcare professionals are telling us to do. I mean, we need to quarantine, we need to wash our hands, we need to whatever, the things that they were being told to do.
Yeah.
And so I know that was a pretty common response. I think this is sad, but yesterday, a friend of mine on Facebook, posts about how I was reading this book about the church in communist China and how they had to meet in secret and they couldn't come together and it was terrible and awful. And oh my goodness, we're at the same place today, because we can't meet in person, persecution, communism's coming for America, run for the hills, basically. And I was just like, we're just following basic healthcare guidelines here. Like, this isn't a permanent situation, and I think people's lack of patience is astounding to me. They think that they can't go virtual for a couple of months or something. It's like they have this view it's going to last forever. It's not. This thing's going to pass. All things pass. Churches will be able to open again. Whatever. I'm not really worried about that. My church, for example, has some people that would be very high risk. Have pre-existing conditions, elderly, that kind of thing. And, we shut down services voluntarily weeks before there was any kind of order in our state, even before there was a serious amount of cases, not because we're terrified the sky is falling on our heads, but like, it would be really terrible, honestly, like lose some people in our church. And so it was just like, well, we just want to care about these people. We'll get together in person at a later date. Not that big a deal. Nobody's freaking out, and I really respect my church leaders for making that call, because honestly, it wasn't exactly a popular decision at that point. Now, of course, everybody sees it was the right move. But to the idea that this is some type of persecution and so evil that we can't get together, if I have a serious flu, I am not going to go to church on Sunday because
Yeah.
I would hate to give that to my family,
Yeah.
my Jesus family. That would be lame. Like, I
Yeah.
would be a bad person to want to give that. And you know what? We understand that these things do transmit person to person. Would you wish your disease on somebody else?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
just a little common sense goes a long way,
Yeah.
you know.
My
Anyway, a long rant there, but that one gets me in just a little bit. So.
yeah. Why my mom, just to dovetail on that, my mom used to get exasperated sometimes when like a common cold would just cycle through our church community over and over again because people weren't like, let's just stay home for a little bit, or especially if
Exactly.
you have it.
Just care about people,
Yeah.
just be nice. Like, just
Yeah.
be a good human being and
Yeah.
don't pass disease. I mean, and it's kind of crazy that we have to even make that point. That is such a basic point of
Mm-hmm.
humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that is a real way to love your neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
My landlord is an elderly fella. I mean, he's in good condition, but I mean, he's an older guy, and
Mm-hmm.
and him and his wife, and we love them dearly. But guess what? Like, we haven't seen them for over a month, and we miss that. We used to hang out
Mm-hmm.
a lot, but like, out of respect for them, I'm not going to go visit them right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, um,
Yeah.
I can visit them a month from now. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And just as kind of dovetailing with the business side of things, something I've tried to do is a lot of in handyman work here in LA. A lot of my clients are older people, and so that's partly why it got all shut down. And so I try to touch base with them. Just, hey, how are you doing? You staying healthy? You staying engaged? Now, there's two reasons I do that for, and I'm not sure which one is the actual reason. So you can tell me. One is I think it's
sure.
I want to care for them as a Christian business person. It's more than just the money. I want to care for them. The other one is I think it's a way of developing loyal customers when I care for them
Sure.
through a pandemic. And so, yeah, let's find ways we can respect those, especially at high risk, and then also care for them as we can.
Yeah. Yeah,
Why?
exactly.
Yeah. Why do you think we freak out? Why do we see this as a communist, an overreach of government? Why are we so prone to conspiracies?
I don't know if we'll ever fully understand why.
Yeah.
But in the circles that I'm familiar with, is primarily Mennonite, Anabaptist, etc. And to be honest, it is blowing my mind. I can't open up Facebook right now
Mm.
without at the top of my feed seeing some type of conspiracy.
Yeah.
Um, I will say I do believe our people specifically are very gullible. Unfortunately, we
Mm-hmm.
see a YouTube video that says something that might confirm a certain bias we have. Like, we tend to be a little skittish of government authority, quote,
Mm-hmm.
experts, like we're a little, and that's not a bad thing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to not swallow what experts tell you as hook, line, and sinker.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. But if you have that bias, which it's a bias, everybody has a bias, that's just kind of how we are. And then you see a YouTube video that confirms your bias. It's like, oh my goodness, I was right all along. And then without even thinking, you share it to Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes a thing. And then someone might say, oh, you're wrong. Well, then you got to push back. And it becomes this thing where we're now engaging as if that person is my enemy.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that whole process started was because you had a certain way of looking at the world. You found something that fit,
Mm-hmm.
and you shared it. I'm going to say prematurely before you researched it.
Yeah.
Just because it's on YouTube doesn't make it true.
Yeah.
If a good thing to keep in mind when you're doing research or when you see something on Facebook, if it immediately makes you angry, terrified, or deeply concerned, almost always it's hyped or it's just straight up not true.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that is a really easy metric to use. Now, that can apply to literally anything that you see. If it makes you go, oh my goodness, that's terrible, it's probably exaggerated.
Yeah.
Not always, but just right there. Take a step back, be reasonable, call up someone who might know a little more about it than you, dig into the sources,
Mm-hmm.
think things through. And I don't understand it. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
people are just really gullible, I guess.
yeah.
I don't know.
And even with what you're saying, like even if you look at both perspectives, because something that you'll find is, I'm trying to think of a concrete example that I could point people to, but I'm drawing a
Like
blank
the
right now. But
confirmation,
yeah,
the confirmation bias. Oh,
confirmation.
no, you posted a great one today, Mark of the Beast.
Yeah,
Perfect confirmation bias example. I mean,
yeah,
perfect,
yeah,
you
exactly.
know?
Like everybody's freaking out about ID 2020 and the Mark of the Beast and all that, um, and so yeah, go on my Facebook. One of my professors, Matthew Halstead, posted a response to that, and just kind of parsing through like what is actually the Mark of the Beast according to Revelation. What's Revelation talking about? And essentially says the Mark of the Beast is not going to be anything that you accidentally get or that is a medical procedure.
But people have a confirmation bias that is how they viewed Revelation. So
Yeah,
when they see the possibility, this vague something they don't understand might get injected into them because of this pandemic, they immediately freak out and say,
yeah,
"Well, see, I told you, it's
yeah,
true. See, the mark
yeah.
of the beast is true. It confirmed the bias they already had." And I need to be careful I don't trash those people as dumb or no, they're not. They're
Mm-hmm.
not. They
Mm-hmm.
genuinely believe this, but mostly because they had already came to that this
A
was the way it
conclusion.
was going to
Yeah,
be.
yeah.
Yeah. And then they see some, and I mean, I do this all the time too. So I need to be
Mm-hmm.
careful about it. It's something we all need to be aware of, and it is so easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, sorry, I feel
Yeah.
like I kind of interrupted you there.
No, yeah, that's good. Like it's yeah, as you said, we all have a bias, and it's okay. Like our bias may even be good, but rather than just when we see something that confirms it, rather than just sharing that right away, let's look at what other voices are saying and let's engage the two. And sometimes we discover that they're talking about two separate things. And so they're both like true,
Oops.
but they're talking about different aspects of the medical, like just the way deaths are being reported and all that. That's been a huge one. That it's like when you
Yeah.
listen to somebody talking, one of the interviews going around, and then you listen to actual healthcare people who've been writing death certificates since before COVID-19. You discover, oh yeah, it's true. They're putting other things down as well. Like it's not just COVID-19. Well, that's how it's always been. That's how you do it, even in non-crisis times. And so, gaining a
Mm-hmm.
fuller perspective. Also, the other thing that's pretty typical that I try to smell out is what's the incentive for this person sharing this. And it's election year. There's doctors running for Senate. They're going around on YouTube videos.
Ooh.
We're sharing them about that, and so like
Yep.
just be aware of that. They have a political incentive for their position. It's not. We don't have to assume that they're completely wrong, but we just take
Mm-hmm.
that part of the information as well as we try to discern what they're saying. Also, just because somebody's got a doctor doesn't mean they're an expert in epidemiology or viral infections. Like, look at what their
That's
doctor
very
is
key.
in.
Yeah.
It would be like saying a carpenter, oh, I'm a carpenter, but I specialize in flooring as opposed to roofs, like,
Yeah.
or something
Yeah,
like that. We
exactly.
don't, yeah,
I mean, like when the whole, okay, so like the death certificate thing, I don't know. I don't care. I'm not a medical professional. I'll let somebody else handle that. But like I
mm-hmm.
literally just called him up, my friend in Brooklyn. No, yeah, Brooklyn.
Yeah,
Sorry, I keep getting Bronx and Brooklyn mixed up because I have friends in both. But anyway, he's a surgeon up there. Great guy. We did an interview. It's up on Antibiotics Perspectives. Check it out. But
yeah,
basically, I was like, what is it like out there? And he said, literally, I look out my office window and there are piles of bodies.
yeah,
Okay, that's morbid, dark, and sadistic, but that's just the way it is. My hospital literally ran out of body bags.
yeah,
The morgue is overflowing, and they have a refrigerator truck parked outside my window, and they're tossing
yeah,
bodies in. Now, I don't care what caused the deaths. That's bad. Like that
yeah,
is not a normal experience for a
yeah,
city to go through, and that's terrifying. And that, well, I mean, okay, I need to be careful I don't become fear mongering myself, but like
mm-hmm.
that really like whoa, that made me sit back and be like, oh my, that's really tragic.
Yeah,
And there, the families can't have a funeral for these people who died because of the virus. All these things, it makes for a really nasty situation. So can we get past the details of how medical experts are, whatever? I don't care. A lot of people are dying way more than normal, in New York City. I'm not saying across, whatever, but in his hospitals, it's bad. And he's basically saying, can we just please stop arguing and just love these people? Because this is a really rough time for him. I mean, he's losing patients frequently, patients who beat cancer, and then their immune systems are low, and then they get nailed by the virus, and then they die. And he said it is so hard making those phone calls to their family, and so all that to say, can we please look past trying to win an argument and say, wow, that is tragic. What an opportunity for the church to step up and do what we're supposed to do instead of arguing about numbers. That's not our job as a church to say, oh, I think all the doctors are conspiring and forging death certificates. That has nothing to do with our job description. I don't really care, even if that were true, which I definitely don't believe it's true. I mean, I have medical friends. They would never forge a death certificate. Even if that were true, it wouldn't change anything about our responsibility. It really wouldn't.
Exactly.
Anyway, bit of a rant. But and that's just. But again, instead of letting Facebook get you all flamed up because somebody posts something inflammatory, step back, call a friend in New York City, and say, hey, is this actually real?
Exactly. Call a friend in New York City or any healthcare personnel worker who's regularly caring for patients or potentially filling out death certificates.
I need to be careful I don't get cynical, because it's just like, how dare you accuse my friends of lying, but then I get personally emotionally involved, and that's bad. So I should not, I shouldn't do that. But like, I had a friend message me and say, they're forging death certificates, and I messaged back and said, you're calling my friends liars. That's bad. You just crossed the line. Like, these are my friends. They would never lie. I know them. And I think I was a little bit harsh, and I apologize if he's listening to this. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have responded quite that strongly. But anyway.
Well, no, I don't think people realize how they're indicting their brothers and sisters who are in the medical field by some of the things they say and share. And if they were to stop and picture one of those healthcare workers that they know right before they share or type out, I think they'd change what they'd say a little bit, or how they'd say it.
100%.
Because, and even just, like, I've watched some nurses and doctors interacting on Facebook and stuff, and people literally, they view what they say, which is firsthand account. They've been in this at least a year, which is, I mean, you're spending at least 36 hours a week in a hospital. That's way, times that by 52, whatever that is. That's way more than most of us spend in a hospital in 10 years. Let alone, like, some of my friends are doctors that have been in for going on 10 years now, or more than 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we're taking them at the same face value as some political pundit on Fox News or Epoch Times or whatever. And we sit back. I've seen people say, well, I'm just not sure what to believe. And it's right there. Like, the firsthand accounts are right there in front of you.
Again, a friend of mine posted on Facebook, somebody had went into a hospital or near a hospital, took video footage in New York City. See, there's no patients here. It's fine. And I was like, did they go inside the hospital with actual medical care professionals?
Yeah.
It ain't empty in there.
Yeah.
And I commented, again, I tried to keep my cool. But it was like, look, we have a team, guys I helped train. I know them well. Wonderful brothers in the Lord. Great guys, professional emergency response personnel. They're working with EMS. They're in these hospitals every day. I have a friend who's a surgeon in these hospitals. I have pastor friends that are up there. Mm-hmm. They've been in those hospitals. You want to see photos? It is not true.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where he posted and say, well, I just don't know what to believe anymore. I'm like, it's not that hard. Like find, I mean, so he's a Mennonite. Okay. So find some Mennonites up in New York City. Ask them, is that hospital actually full? Please do that before sharing it to all your friends and now making them all the more confused. You know what I mean? Like it's there again, it comes back to that thing when you see something on especially social media, YouTube, whatever, that inflames you to feel either like really scared or angry. Almost always it's a slanted bias with a very intentional agenda. And I'm not getting political. It can be right wing, left wing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't care.
Yeah.
Both sides do this because there is a real, if you can get people mad at the other side, you can win votes, and this becomes a really nasty game really quickly. And it saddens me that medical professionals have to get wrapped up in a political scene, instead of actually doing their job. But anyway, another rant. I need to stop now.
If this was all a hoax, the surgeons that specialize in elective surgeries who are getting all their surgeries canceled and are now working to take care of COVID patients, like, they wouldn't put up with it. They would
oh my goodness,
standing saying, no, this is baloney, but they're not.
Yeah.
And so anyways, we could
conspiracies. I genuinely believe this. Okay. I do not see how conspiracy theories, even if they were true, would serve the body of Christ. Like, as in, every time I see a conspiracy theory on Facebook, first thing that goes in my head, will this help me love my neighbor better? Well, no. Like, why would, no.
Yeah.
Why would the latest conspiracy theory about Bill Gates, which everybody's going to forget in 2 weeks when a new theory comes out, how is that going to help me serve my neighbors better? It's not. So why would I waste my time researching that when, hey, I could actually do something with my life? Anyway, kind of making the same point a different way.
No, and that's exactly true. And maybe we've been talking about this about an hour now, so why don't we wrap up? Just, what are 3 things that every one of us, we don't have to be a medical health professional, we don't have to be a business person, we could be that person sitting at home on Netflix, spouting on Facebook. What are 3 very practical ways we can love our neighbor better during this time?
Number 1, you have a moral obligation to do everything you possibly can to not get people sick, to love your neighbors, and to actually care about the church and what the church is doing. You do. If you are a believer in Jesus, you have a moral obligation to do that. That's commands from Scripture. So start there, and that's going to look different for every person. Second thing, I would say, you know what? Get off of Facebook. Okay, hold on. It's blinking out again here.
I'm still with you. Can you hear me?
All right, you still there?
I'm still there. That's weird. I hear you the whole time. Can you hear me?
Oh no. We may have to just finish without the video part. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But
yeah, that would be fine. I mean, we could do that if. Yeah. Anyways, the first part is moral obligation to care for our neighbors.
Yeah. So, and then the second thing I would say is simply mind what you say. Like, your words matter. If you're the one who gets on Facebook and bashes all the, the liberals or the conservatives or the whoever, mind what you say. Be Jesus-like in the way you approach things. And honestly, you'd probably feel a lot better if you would just stay off Facebook completely. Honestly, unless you have something really glorious and wonderful to enlighten the world with, Facebook is just yeah, exactly. What would we do with all our spare time? But like the world doesn't need more polarizing material right now. Facebook debates in the comment threads is almost never a good idea. So just think about those things and really do your homework. Like, if you're going to be sharing information, please be sure that it actually makes sense and that you're not just adding noise to an already chaotic situation that is hurting a lot of people. Church, we're better than that. We really are. And then the third thing is just remember how the church has always handled these things. You know what? We're going to pull through it. We're going to be just fine. The church has been through a lot worse in the past. And the church has always had a really amazing testimony. I need to be careful when I use the word always, but I think you understand what I'm saying. The church, for the most part, has had a really good testimony during times like this. And let's retain that. It's a very valuable heritage, and we are set up at a prime opportunity to reach people who have never heard or would never consider interacting with a Christian. And now we have that opportunity. We probably will never get an opportunity this amazing to serve the people around us, probably ever in my lifetime, like this. Let's really take advantage of that. So that's what I'd say. The moral obligation to care for the people around us and to not get people sick. Second, stop spreading misinformation. Just take a break from Facebook. It's not the end of the world if you leave. And then the third thing is the church has always mained it through times like this. It's our time to shine. Go for it. Find creative ways to serve. Church, this is what you're made to do. Right here. This is it.
Yeah, that is good. It is. Let's get back in Scripture and find our view of the world based in Scripture and not in our position on politics.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Reagan, for coming on, and thanks for sharing with us and challenging us with not only these 3 points, but with what you're doing through Anabaptist COVID response team. Anybody who wants to check out what they're doing more specifically and how you could be involved in it, specifically based in PA, New York area. Is that correct?
Yeah. Basically, it's to inspire churches all over America to do what they can to help.
Yeah, exactly. So, check them out on Facebook, AnabaptistCOVIDresponse.org, I think. Did I get that right? Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then also check out Reagan on Facebook and Anabaptist Perspectives, Bronze Bow Media. I think that's your media.
That's my media team.
Team. Okay. Mm-hmm. And other projects that you've got going. Pretty much just Facebook, Reagan, and you'll be able to find most of it, right? Is that correct?
Yep. Twitter, YouTube. Yep. Definitely hit me up. I'd love to hear feedback from people.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll try to drop links in the episode notes here to Reagan's Facebook and website and ways you can get a hold of Reagan. Thank you for taking the time, and hope you have a good rest of your week, and God bless you in your work.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Asher. I really enjoyed this.
Yes, same here.